Hey there, mic check, mic check. Okay, cool. So this is now going to start reaching into the realm of the S tier, according to my personal preferences in the Crucible. This is the Attunement of Control. I really enjoy the subclass. What I'm going to show you in the background for footage was a game I just played. It's not an optimized build. There are definitely different weapons that you could use, different gear sets, so on and so forth. Most of the gear that I have doesn't have any synergistic mods whatsoever, but the whole point of that is to showcase the amount of ability uptime that you have with Pulse Wave, or not Pulse Wave, with the ley lines, and the ability to use some finesse plays. So the entire concept of this build in particular that I'm going to showcase alongside with the Attunement of Control is a very tactical, targeted aggression towards certain types of metas. I'm using Storm Grenade, which is a huge AoE effect grenade that affects large clusters of people. I'm also using the Cerberus +1, which does a very similar thing. And then I'm pairing that with a collection version of the Chromatic Fire, which has an unflinching auto rifle aim. Chromatic Fire will cause an explosion on a crit, and with Cerberus +1 doing a lot of area damage, that means that more damage will be all over the place, and it'll be very chaotic. So it'll be very cool. Like, this is a very fun build to use. I'm backing that up with a couple of other things here and there that I'll talk about. But one of the main things that I really enjoy about this class is the Ball Lightning melee. It hits at an extended range. I also like the ley lines. They grant a lot of ability energy, and it allows you to have really flexible builds that isn't really reliant on any one thing in particular. This is the Orentil that I'll be using to pair with this. I have two fusion rifle scavengers. This is a max range Orentil for the most part. It's not a perfect roll. I would have preferred Particle Repeater instead of the not accelerated coils, projection fuse. I would have much rather had Particle Repeater for that, but that is a very good Orentil. I've had it for quite a while, since near the beginning of the launch. It was one of the first guns that I got. It's still pretty low level, but one of the other things that I really enjoy about the subclass is its versatility. You can get away with using a lot of the neutral game upside pieces that Warlock have, like Ophidian Aspects, Sanguine Alchemy, and some of the other ones that were kind of shown there that I'm trying to keep pace with my video. But for the most part, I want to show that the sandbox is full of these really interesting, unique builds, so long as you're willing to put the time into learning the quirks of weapons and archetypes and how they synergize and how deal targeted damage or non-targeted damage, or doubling down on a certain type of tactic like I'm doing with this particular build, which is going to be area of effect damage. On this particular map, this is a very good build because everything's close quarters, there's tight lines, people will be clustered up, so I'll gain benefit from Cerberus dealing damage on multiple targets. I'll gain benefit from quick drawing out my Orentil to burst down anybody that pushes me. I'll gain benefit from my extended melee range to help deal with shotgun aggression. And I will also have added upside with my exotic, dealing more area damage as well with my primary. So long as I'm accurate and maintain good shot registration with that. So one of the things that I really, really enjoy about this, and one of the reasons why I rank this so highly in the sandbox for Warlocks, I do rank it as an S tier class, is because of its flexibility. It has very little downside, and it also has a super that can shut down other supers. The previous video in this series was focusing on the Attunement of Grace, and while Attunement of Grace I think has a better neutral game in general, as far as ability uptime is concerned, the Attunement of Control, the one being showcased right now, has better aggressive lines of play available to it, along with the unique ability to really flex around through the exotics to get a lot of upside and quirky builds out of it. So I think that this is probably the most finesse class that the Warlocks have currently, other than the Attunement of Grace. Again, I rank this very highly on my tier list because everything about it is really good. It has some team-based synergy with the Pulse Wave mechanic. Pulse Wave mechanic, when you're critically wounded, boosts your movement or it just boosts your speed, which includes your handling speed for your weapons, your reload speed for your weapons, your access to movement, and your access to movement around the map, and it also does that for your teammates as well. So there's some team-based utility built into this subclass, and then you also have the added upside of having a Slayer super that can do highly focused damage to either one target or multiple targets. It can shut down pretty much any super on the map, so long as you use it appropriately. You can cancel your super very early, which I think is a very unique characteristic to have in a subclass. There's nothing else that really has that available. And I think that since this subclass has a super that does highly targeted damage towards one target or multiple targets, whatever's caught in its beam, it's a very good counter super subclass. So you don't have to double down on having super cooldown mods in this build. You can focus on having other types of builds synergize with either your abilities or your stats or a mixture of both, and you'll still have added benefit because you do gain upside from just getting kills, generating orbs of light with your weapons, and then also you can have some perks in your armor that synergize with gaining your super if that's something that you feel so inclined to do. I personally find and personally like using this build without any super generation mechanics. I feel that that's the most rewarding because I do use the super as sparingly as possible. You'll see in this clip that I do use my super fairly often in this match when it seems appropriate to do so. But again, I think that if I were to be using this in the competitive game mode, I would hold on to my super more often than I would not. And that's generally because it has the capacity to shut down some of the more abusive supers that have roaming characteristics, like Ursa Furiosa, or Hammers, or Dawnblade, or Nova Warp, which is about to push me right here. And I think that having that added utility built into it is very rewarding. Now, moving on to the next part of this subclass that I think is extremely nice is the ley lines. The ley lines benefit you in pretty much every way. If you get an assist, you get a ley line. If you get a kill, you get a ley line. Not always guaranteed, but it has a fairly high chance of activating that perk. And that's why I think having a build like this that is focused on doing a lot of damage to multiple targets all at once, you can maximize the amount of uptime that you have on your ley lines, which contribute energy towards your abilities, which allows you to put resources into other areas of your build, whether it be stats or whether it be cooldown mods that you're really intently focused on. I think that it's one of those kind of characteristics to a subclass that really allows a lot of deviation and agency to the player. After that, I think the next thing to talk about is the Ball Lightning melee. The extended melee range on this is very generous. It has a very far reach, and it combos well with high-impact hand cannons, it combos well with shotguns, it combos well with fusion rifles, it combos well with bows, it combos well with auto rifles, it combos well with a lot of things because it does a very substantial amount of damage, and you can make some very clutch plays with it. It's a beautiful mechanic. I really enjoy the ball lightning feel. I like priming a doorway or an active lane with a ball lightning and then following it up with a nice crisp shot. It's just a beautiful mechanic, and I really like the finesse that is there. I think there's a really high skill gap to getting used to using the ball mechanic lightning, but I think it's really fun and very rewarding to use. So that's another factor into my consideration for this being a top tier PvP subclass. The subclass also has a lot of utility in PvE and PvEVP, like Gambit and so on and so forth. It has a high damage super, you have a lot of ability uptime like I said before, and it combos well with a lot of different weapons that are in the archetypes. You don't have to go through the Crucible using a build like I'm using, but I enjoy having alternative lines of play available to me to make judgment calls based on what I'm facing and what I'm going to be dealing with in the Crucible. And I like having that diversified feel, and I think that this is one of those subclasses that allows me to really uncap my choice and agency in the game. Now again, I'm on Xbox, so my footage is going to cut out here in just a second. Don't worry, it's still the same game. But again, to continue on the topic of this being an S-tier Warlock subclass, I just think that it has a very good mixture of ability uptime, potent abilities. It has a unique grenade in it as well. I love the Storm Grenade. A lot of people are on the fence about Storm Grenade. There's definitely some arguments that can be made for Arc Bolt Grenade, which has a faster uptime and reliable damage, as well as Pulse Grenade, which is definitely a very powerful grenade. But I like using the Storm Grenade because it's unique to this subclass alone, and it has a very high area of effect. So I'm optimizing the amount of area that I can control and put damage onto with the Storm Grenade. There is a bit of a delay with the Storm Grenade for its damage output, but I find it very rewarding, and I also find it very unique, and I feel that it's just one of those grenades that is very cool to use in the subclass. After that is all talked about, we still have Rift Synergy, and we also have some other specific exotics to talk about. You don't have to use Chromatic Fire, like I mentioned earlier in the video. You can get away with using something like a neutral piece, a neutral exotic, like Phidian Aspects or Sanguine Alchemy, but there are some specific synergy pieces that do work with this subclass, like the Geomag Stabilizers and the Crown of Tempests. And both are very good. Even though Crown of Tempest has synergy more with Storm Trance, it still affects your ability uptime when you get kills with your arc abilities, and that has some merit. Geomag Stabilizers I think is more of a PvE thing, or more of a exotic if you're favoring a super cooldown build, but I personally prefer, again, to play this around my intermediate game and around my abilities. I really love this subclass. It's got a unique feel to it. It is aggressive, but also tactile and tactical. So thanks for the watch, and we'll be getting into the next and final video for the